The massive crystal displays in the Galactic Council chamber showed Earth's small fleet of ships against the backdrop of their solar system. Murmurs of amusement rippled through the gathered alien representatives. Many struggled to hide their smiles as they watched the footage of humanity's best warships patrolling their borders. "These humans," spoke Council member Trix, his long fingers tapping against the polished table. "They've achieved faster than light travel rather quickly. But their vessels are remarkably small." He couldn't keep the hint of mockery from his voice. The Council's first speaker, an ancient being named Vor, raised a hand for silence. "Small they may be, but they have managed to establish 3 colonial outposts in just 2 years since achieving FTL capability. That's unprecedented." In Earth's orbital command center, Admiral Ross stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching similar feeds of the Council's reaction to humanity's introduction to the galactic community. His weathered face remained carefully neutral, even as his junior officers shifted uncomfortably at the barely concealed derision from the alien races. "Let them laugh," he said quietly. "History is full of armies that made the mistake of judging by size alone." The doors slid open, and Captain Peters rushed in with a data tablet. "Admiral, the Dominion Empire's scout ships have completed their assessment of our fleet. They're broadcasting their findings across all major galactic channels." Ross took the tablet, his eyes scanning the report. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly as he read phrases like "admirably compact vessels" and "charming attempt at space warfare capability." "Sir," Peters continued, "they're saying our largest battleship would fit in their cargo holds. The general reaction across the galaxy is, well, they're not taking us seriously." Ross handed the tablet back. "Good. Did our sensor arrays get all the data we needed when their scout ships did their flyby?" Peters nodded. Engineering Officer Miller's new scanning system worked perfectly. They had no idea we were analyzing their ships while they were busy mocking ours. "Excellent." Ross turned back to the main display, where a massive Dominion warship was passing Jupiter. Its hull was covered in ornate decorations, clearly meant to intimidate with its size and grandeur. "Send the scanned data to Research and Development, and accept the invitation to the diplomatic summit." "Sir," Peters looked confused. "You want to attend even after these insults?" Ross smiled, and for a moment, Peters saw the cunning that had made Ross the youngest admiral in Earth's history. "Of course. It's always best to let your opponent underestimate you. Besides, their ships may be big, but did you notice how their engine configuration creates a massive blind spot in their aft sensors? Or how their weapon systems require so much power they can't fire and maintain shields simultaneously?" Peter's eyes widened. "No, sir, I didn't. That's because you were looking at their size. They've fallen into the trap of building bigger rather than better. Their ships are cathedrals designed to impress." Ross's smile faded. "But we built ours for war." The next day, the Galactic Council chambers were abuzz with news that the humans had accepted the invitation to the diplomatic summit. The Dominion Empire's ambassador Marcus laughed openly as he discussed it with his peers. "Their entire fleet could dock inside one of our destroyer bays," he boasted. "Perhaps we should offer to protect them. For a reasonable tribute, of course." Back on Earth, final preparations were underway. In a secure facility deep under the Pacific Ocean, engineers were putting the finishing touches on systems that had never been revealed to any alien survey team. The small size of human ships had allowed them to create innovations that the larger ships couldn't match. As Admiral Ross reviewed the latest reports, he remembered an ancient quote from Earth's history: "Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall." Soon, he muttered to himself, they'll learn that humanity didn't build small ships because we had to. We built them this way because it's better. He looked at the classified specifications of the HMS Defiant, Earth's most advanced warship. On paper, it appeared to be a light cruiser. In reality, it was something else entirely. The gathering storm of conflict was approaching, and humanity was ready. They had spent centuries fighting among themselves, perfecting the art of war. Now, faced with alien powers that thought them weak, they would show the galaxy why size wasn't everything. The stage was set. The players were in position, and humanity's tiny fleet was about to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. The diplomatic summit took place in the Centauri neutral zone, where massive ships from across the galaxy gathered like metal mountains in space. The human vessels looked like toys in comparison, their clean lines and simple designs standing in stark contrast to the ornate alien ships surrounding them. Captain James stood on the bridge of the HMS Defiant, watching as a Dominion battleship passed overhead. The alien vessel was so large it blocked out the nearby star, casting a shadow over the entire human fleet. Quite a sight, isn't it? Engineering Officer Miller walked up beside him, tablet in hand. That big one above us could probably house a small city. James nodded. And how many weaknesses have you counted so far? Miller grinned. 17 major ones, sir. They're so focused on looking impressive that they've left gaps in their sensor coverage. And those fancy decorative towers, they're blocking their own weapon arcs. The radio crackled. HMS Defiant, this is Dominion vessel Emperor's Glory. Please dock in our secondary cargo bay for the diplomatic reception. The alien officer's voice carried barely hidden amusement. Negative, Emperor's Glory, James replied calmly. We will dock at the neutral station as agreed in the protocols. There was a pause. The walk from the station to the main reception hall is quite long. We're simply offering convenience to our smaller friends. James exchanged a look with Miller. We enjoy the exercise. Defiant out. The neutral station's docking bay was crowded with ships from dozens of species. The human delegation walked through the corridors, ignoring the mix of amusement and pity from the other representatives. Their simple blue uniforms looked plain next to the elaborate costumes of the alien diplomats. In the main reception hall, Ambassador Marcus of the Dominion Empire held court like a king. His species was naturally tall, and his ceremonial armor made him tower over the human delegates. He smiled down at Admiral Ross. Admiral, we've reviewed your fleet specifications. Marcus's voice carried across the hall. The Dominion Empire is willing to offer Earth protection. Your ships are charming, but the galaxy can be dangerous for developing races. Ross took a sip from his drink. That's a generous offer, Ambassador. But I believe there's been a misunderstanding about our capabilities. Oh, Marcus raised an eyebrow. Your largest ship is smaller than our medical vessels. Surely you don't think. Size isn't everything, Ambassador. Miller cut in, earning a sharp look from the alien diplomat. Sorry, but I couldn't help noticing that your ship's power systems are quite inefficient. The room grew quiet. Marcus's smile became fixed. You dare to criticize Dominion engineering. Our ships are the pinnacle of galactic technology. Not criticism, Miller replied. Just an observation. You're using 40% of your power just to move those massive hulls. Another 30% goes to maintaining all that decorative lighting. That leaves only 30% for actual operations. And how would you know that? Marcus demanded. The same way we know about the structural weakness in your port nacelles, Miller said casually. We looked. The silence in the room became heavy. James stepped forward, drawing attention from the increasingly angry ambassador. We built small ships because they're better, more efficient, more maneuverable, and much, much harder to hit. Is that a threat? Marcus growled. Not at all, Ross interjected smoothly. Just sharing information, since we're all friends here. Though I did notice your ships have been running active scans on our fleet since we arrived. We would appreciate if that stopped. Marcus's face showed surprise before he could hide it. The human ship's sensors shouldn't have been able to detect the scans. Of course, he said stiffly. A simple routine security measure. Nothing more. As the reception continued, word spread through the alien delegations. The humans had not only detected the scans, but had gathered detailed information about the Dominion ships. Perhaps these tiny vessels weren't as primitive as everyone had assumed. Later, back on the Defiant, James found Miller in engineering. "That was quite a show you put on." Miller looked up from his work. "They needed to know we're not as helpless as they think. Besides, I only mentioned the weaknesses we wanted them to know about." James smiled. "How many didn't you mention?" 34, sir, and counting. The first moves in this game of galactic politics had been played. The Dominion Empire was angry, the other races were curious, and humanity's tiny fleet had shown its first hint of teeth. The real question was, who would make the next move? The attack came without warning. 3 massive Dominion warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the human mining colony on Beta Centauri. Their weapons were already charged. "This is Captain Dex of the Dominion Empire." The transmission boomed. "Your miners have strayed into Dominion-claimed space. This violation cannot be ignored." The colony's governor, Tom Wilson, stood in the control center, watching the massive ships loom over his small outpost. "There must be some mistake. We've had claim to these asteroids for months. The Galactic Council approved our mining rights." "The Council's decision is under review," Dex replied coldly. "You have 1 hour to evacuate before we cleanse this illegal operation." The distress call reached Earth within minutes. Admiral Ross was already moving before the message finished plinning. "Launch the response fleet, and get me the Galactic Council on the line." 4 human ships jumped into the Beta Centauri system 50 minutes later. The HMS Defiant led the small group, accompanied by 3 destroyers. Against the massive Dominion warships, they looked like insects approaching elephants. Captain James heard the laughter over the open channel. "The humans sent toys to challenge us. Perhaps they wish to surrender in person." "This is your only warning," James transmitted back. "Withdraw from human space immediately." The Dominion ships answered by launching fighters, hundreds of them, filling space with their wings spread like metal birds of prey. Their formation was perfect, practiced, and completely predictable. "Now, Miller," James asked quietly. In the engineering section, Miller's fingers danced across his console. "Ready, sir. They have no idea what they're about to see." "All ships, execute Battle Plan Delta," James ordered. "Show them what our toys can do." The human ships suddenly split apart, their engines flaring with a new kind of light. The Dominion pilots watched in confusion as their targeting systems suddenly couldn't lock onto the small vessels. The human ships were moving in ways that should have been impossible. "What trickery is this?" Captain Dex demanded as his sensors struggled to track the human fleet. "Their drives aren't following normal physics." The HMS Defiant spun on its axis faster than any ship its size should have been able to, bringing its main weapons to bear. A new kind of energy pulse shot out, striking the lead Dominion fighter squadron. Instead of explosions, the fighters simply went dark, their systems completely shut down. "Impossible," Dex shouted. "No EMP weapon can penetrate our shields." "Who said anything about EMP?" Miller's voice came over the channel, calm and almost cheerful. "We just borrowed your own power for a moment. Your ships waste so much energy, it was easy to redirect it." The 3 human destroyers darted between the Dominion capital ships, moving so fast and erratically that the huge vessels couldn't bring their main guns to bear. More fighters went dark, creating a cloud of drifting metal. "Last chance," James transmitted. "Withdraw." On his flagship, Dex was reaching for the retreat order when his weapons officer shouted in panic. "Sir, they're ships. They're inside our shields." "What? How?" "Your shield frequency changes every 3 seconds in a predictable pattern," Miller explained over the channel. "It was in your ship's decorative lighting display. Very pretty. Very unwise." The HMS Defiant appeared directly in front of the Dominion flagship's bridge, so close that Dex could see the human crew through the viewports. Its weapons were aimed at the bridge's weak points. "This is how humanity fights," James said quietly. "We don't need size when we have skill. We don't need flashy displays when we have substance. Your choice, Captain Dex. Stand down, or find out what else our toys can do. The Dominion ships powered down their weapons. In the silence that followed, the galaxy learned its first lesson about humanity's true capabilities. The human ships might be small, but they had just defeated 3 capital ships without firing a single destructive shot. As the Dominion fleet retreated in shame, Admiral Ross received a priority message from the Galactic Council. The other races wanted to know more about these humans who built such small but terrifyingly effective ships. The spark had been lit. The real war was about to begin. The Dominion Empire's response to their humiliation at Beta Centauri was swift and massive. 20 capital ships, each one nearly the size of a small moon, jumped into the system. Their golden hulls gleamed in the starlight as they formed a battle line that stretched for thousands of kilometers. "This ends today," Grand Admiral Rex of the Dominion transmitted across all frequencies. "No more games. No more tricks. Face us with honor, tiny humans." In Earth's command center, Admiral Ross studied the tactical display. The Dominion fleet was arranged in their traditional arrow formation, designed to overwhelm any opposition with sheer firepower. It was exactly what he had expected. "All ships, execute Operation Slingshot," Ross ordered. "Show them what David did to Goliath." 10 human ships emerged from hiding behind Beta Centauri's third moon. Led by the HMS Defiant, they were arranged in what appeared to be a standard defensive formation. The Dominion crews laughed at the sight. "They sent even fewer ships this time," Rex boomed. "Their arrogance will be their doom." Captain James stood on the Defiant's bridge, watching the massive enemy fleet. "Status, Miller." "Their ships are just as wasteful as ever, sir," Miller reported from engineering. "All that fancy gold plating, it's interfering with their heat dispersion. They'll have to vent excess energy every 6 minutes." "Time it perfectly," James ordered. "All ships, prepare for synchronized maneuvers." The Dominion fleet opened fire first, filling space with energy beams and plasma torpedoes. Their barrage was impressive, devastating, and completely useless. The human ships moved in perfect coordination, each one knowing exactly where every shot would go before it was fired. "Impossible," Rex shouted as another salvo missed completely. "Nothing can move that fast." "We're not moving faster," Miller's voice cut in on the channel. "We're just moving smarter. By the way, you should really fix that power surge problem." In 3, 2, 1. Right on schedule, the Dominion ships began venting excess energy. In that exact moment, the human fleet split into pairs, each duo targeting a specific enemy vessel. They moved like dancers in a deadly ballet, using the Dominion's own energy emissions as cover. "Formation Echo," James commanded. "Show them why size doesn't matter in zero gravity." The human ships accelerated to speeds that made the Dominion crews dizzy just watching. They spun and weaved between the massive enemy vessels, exploiting every blind spot, every weakness that Miller had discovered. "Their weapons are designed to hit big targets," Miller explained cheerfully over the channel as another Dominion blast missed the Defiant. "They never considered they'd need to track something our size. Kind of short-sighted, really." One by one, the mighty Dominion ships found themselves disabled by precise strikes to critical systems. The human vessels would dart in close. So close they could have reached out and touched the enemy hulls, then fire their specialized weapons directly into exposed power conduits and sensor arrays. "This is not warfare." Rex raged as his fleet began to drift powerless. This is humanity," James replied calmly. "We spent centuries fighting ourselves, learning to use everything to our advantage. Did you think we would build huge targets just because we could?" The last Dominion ship lost power, its golden hull now dark against the stars. Not a single human vessel had been destroyed. Not one human life had been lost. In the following days, footage of the battle spread across the galaxy. Other races watched in amazement as the tiny human fleet danced through the Dominion formation, turning their greatest strengths into weaknesses. It was a perfect demonstration of skill over size, of efficiency over excess. The Galactic Council chambers were filled with urgent discussions. The Dominion Empire had been considered unbeatable for centuries, yet a handful of human ships had defeated their best fleet without destroying a single vessel. Perhaps, Council member Trix mused, we should reconsider our definition of military power. Back on the Defiant, James found Miller studying more scans of Dominion technology, looking for more weaknesses. Miller smiled. No, sir. Just wondering why they never realized that bigger isn't always better. The battle was over, but the message was clear. Humanity's tiny fleet had changed galactic warfare forever. News of the Beta Centauri battle spread through the galaxy like wildfire. In every spaceport, on every trading world, beings gathered around screens watching the recordings. The sight of tiny human ships disabling the mighty Dominion fleet changed everything. The Galactic Council called an emergency session. The massive chamber was packed as representatives from every major species demanded answers. Ambassador Marcus of the Dominion Empire stood at the center, his former arrogance replaced by barely controlled rage. This was not a fair battle, he shouted. The humans used trickery and dishonorable tactics. Admiral Ross stood calmly at his podium, looking almost small among the larger alien representatives. Interesting. When you thought our ships were weak, size was everything. Now that we've proven otherwise, you speak of honor. The council first speaker, Vor, raised his hand for silence. The footage is clear. Human ships demonstrated superior tactical ability and technology. They disabled 20 Dominion warships without a single casualty on either side. But how? Asked Council member Trix, leaning forward with genuine curiosity. Our best engineers have studied human ships. They seemed so primitive. Ross smiled. We showed you exactly what we wanted you to see. On Earth, we have a saying, good things come in small packages. The chamber's main display activated, showing detailed scans of the human fleet in action. Engineering Officer Miller stepped forward to explain. Our ships are small because we learned to be efficient, Miller said, pointing to various systems. While other races built bigger ships to house more power systems, we found ways to do more with less. Every cubic meter of our ships serves multiple purposes. The display showed a Dominion ship next to a human vessel. Their ships waste energy on elaborate designs and intimidating size. Our ships use every bit of power precisely. It's the difference between a bodybuilder and a martial artist. In the back of the chamber, representatives from smaller galactic races watched with growing interest. For centuries, the Dominion Empire had claimed that only massive ships could be effective in war. Humanity had just proven them wrong. But the Dominion wasn't finished. Ambassador Marcus pulled up his own display, showing a massive fleet gathering near Dominion space. Perhaps a more thorough demonstration is needed. This is the Grand Armada, 100 of our largest warships. They are heading for human space now. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers. Even for the Dominion, this was an overwhelming show of force. 100 capital ships could conquer most of the known galaxy. Ross didn't look concerned. Instead, he pulled out a small device and pressed a button. The chamber's displays changed, showing new images that made Marcus's face go pale. What is this? The ambassador stammered. Our actual fleet, Ross replied quietly. What you've seen so far. Those were just our test ships. Our older models. Would you like to see what we can really do? The images showed hundreds of human vessels, each one incorporating the lessons learned from their early encounters. They were still small compared to Dominion ships, but they were clearly more advanced than anything seen before. As we speak, Ross continued, these ships are moving into position around your Grand Armada. Would you like to test them? Or should we discuss peace terms? Miller stepped forward again. By the way, we've had 6 months to study your technology. Want to guess how many new weaknesses we found? The chamber was silent. The Dominion Empire had just realized they weren't dealing with a primitive race playing at warfare. They were facing an enemy that had perfected the art of space combat through efficiency rather than size. Perhaps, first speaker Vor suggested carefully, it is time for the Dominion Empire to reconsider its position on human territory. Marcus looked at the images of the human fleet again, then at Ross's calm face. For the first time in centuries, the Dominion Empire had met a force it couldn't overwhelm with size alone. The galaxy would never be the same. The Dominion's Grand Armada hung in space like a wall of metal mountains, 100 massive warships, each one bigger than the last, their golden hulls reflecting starlight. They had refused to back down, even after Admiral Ross's warning. Pride, Miller said, watching from the HMS Defiance engineering station. It's always pride that brings them down. Captain James nodded. Status of the new fleet. All ships in position, sir. 300 vessels, spread in a sphere around the Armada. They still think size matters. They haven't even noticed our ships yet. The Dominion Grand Admiral's voice boomed across all channels. So, humans, where is this mighty fleet you claim to have? Or was it just another trick? Ross's voice replied calmly from his flagship. Look closer, Admiral. We've been here all along. Suddenly, every human ship activated their new stealth systems. The void lit up with hundreds of small but deadly vessels, each one positioned perfectly to exploit the Dominion fleet's weaknesses. Impossible, the Grand Admiral shouted. Our sensors are designed to look for big targets, Miller cut in. Just like your weapons, just like everything you build. That's why you never saw us coming. James touched his command console. All ships, execute Operation Checkmate. The human fleet moved as one. Their new engines, even more advanced than before, let them dance through space in ways that defied normal physics. Each ship had been designed to counter specific weaknesses in Dominion technology. First wave, disable their communication arrays, Ross ordered. Second wave, target their power distribution nodes. Third wave, prepare for close-range precision strikes. The Dominion ships fired their massive weapons, but they might as well have been trying to hit dust with a sledgehammer. The human vessels were too small, too fast, and too smart in their movements. Did you know, Miller transmitted to the Dominion fleet, that your fancy golden hulls create perfect reflection points for our targeting systems. You literally made our job easier by trying to look impressive. One by one, the mighty Dominion ships lost power. Their weapons went dead. Their engines shut down. Their shields collapsed. The human fleet had studied every weakness, every flaw, every inefficiency in their design. This is impossible. The Grand Admiral raged. We are the Dominion. We have the biggest fleet in the galaxy. Size isn't everything, James replied. While you were building bigger ships, we were building better ones. While you focused on looking powerful, we focused on being powerful. The last Dominion ship fell silent. The entire Grand Armada, pride of the Empire, floated powerless in space. Not a single human ship had been lost. On the bridge of his flagship, Ross opened a channel to the Galactic Council, who had been watching the battle. As you can see, we didn't need size to win. We just needed to be smarter. Council member Trix spoke first. The humans disabled 100 capital ships in less than an hour, without destroying any of them, without losing any of their own ships. Most impressive, first speaker Vor added. It seems we have all underestimated the advantages of efficient design over brute force. Miller's voice came over the channel again. We can restore power to their ships whenever you're ready, Admiral. Though I suggest we make them remove all that wasteful golden plating first. It's really quite impractical. In the days that followed, the galaxy watched as human ships towed the powerless Dominion Armada back to port. The sight of the tiny vessels pulling the massive warships became a symbol of a new era in galactic warfare. The message was clear. The age of giant warships was over. The future belonged to those who understood that bigger wasn't always better. As James watched the last Dominion ship being towed away, he turned to Miller. "Think they've learned their lesson?" Miller smiled. "If not, we still have a few tricks they haven't seen yet. The galaxy would never mock humanity's tiny fleet again." 6 months after the defeat of the Grand Armada, the Galactic Council chamber looked very different. Where once the Dominion representatives had dominated the space with their towering forms and elaborate dress, now they sat quietly in simple uniforms. Their golden armor was gone, melted down as part of the peace treaty. Admiral Ross stood at the central podium, presenting humanity's new shipbuilding guidelines to the assembled races. Behind him, the main display showed the elegant efficiency of human vessel design. "The age of wasteful warships is over," he declared. "We're offering our technology to any race that wants to build better, not bigger." In the audience, dozens of representatives from smaller species leaned forward with interest. For centuries, they had been unable to compete with larger races simply because they couldn't build massive ships. Now, everything had changed. "The Stellar Republic of Pine accepts humanity's offer," announced their ambassador, a being barely taller than a human child. "We look forward to learning from Earth's engineers." One by one, other races stepped forward to join the new alliance. Even some former Dominion allies switched sides, recognizing that the future belonged to those who embraced efficiency over size. On the HMS Defiant, now docked at the Council station, Captain James watched the proceedings with Miller at his side. "Did you ever think we'd end up teaching shipbuilding to the galaxy?" James asked. Miller smiled, checking readings on his tablet. "Better than fighting them. Though I must admit, watching their faces when our tiny ships disabled their pride and joy was pretty satisfying." The tablet showed images of the former Dominion Grand Armada. The massive ships were being rebuilt, stripped of their excessive decorations, and retrofitted with human design systems. They would serve as cargo vessels now, their weapons replaced with storage bays. "Speaking of satisfaction," James said, "have you seen the latest designs from the Joint Engineering Project?" Miller's eyes lit up. "The one with the Pine Republic? Their miniaturization technology combined with our power systems is incredible. We're building ships the size of shuttles with the firepower of battlecruisers." The chamber's display changed, showing the new cooperative projects between humanity and their allies. Ships of all sizes demonstrated that power didn't depend on physical mass. The Dominion representatives watched silently, learning their lesson at last. Ambassador Marcus, now wearing a simple diplomatic uniform, approached Ross after the presentation. "We were wrong," he admitted quietly. "We thought size meant strength. We forgot that the smallest blade can be the sharpest." Ross nodded. "The galaxy's a big place, Ambassador. Big enough for all of us to grow, to learn, to improve. We never wanted to humiliate the Dominion. We just wanted to show you a better way." The new peace wasn't just about military power. Human efficiency experts were helping other races redesign everything from cargo ships to space stations. The galaxy was becoming more sustainable, less wasteful, and more accessible to species of all sizes. Back on Earth, the orbital shipyards were busy building vessels for a dozen different races. Each ship was small, efficient, and powerful, a testament to humanity's philosophy that bigger isn't always better. "You know what the best part is?" Miller asked, watching a newly completed ship leave the yard. "No one's laughing at our fleet size anymore." James chuckled. "No, now they're all trying to build smaller ships. I heard the Dominion's new designs are actually quite good." "Nothing like a little humility to spark innovation," Ross said, joining them at the viewport. "The galaxy's changing, gentlemen, and we helped change it." The three men watched as ships of all races moved through space around them. Large and small, they worked together in a dance of cooperation rather than competition. The mighty Dominion Empire had become just one voice among many, no longer ruling through intimidation and size. Humanity's tiny fleet had done more than win a war. It had revolutionized galactic society, proving that true power comes from how you use what you have, not how much you have to use. As Ross liked to say, Sometimes the smallest changes make the biggest difference. A galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what humanity had hoped for all along.